The bus rattled forward through the narrow mountain road, its tired engine groaning with every climb. Dust clung to the windows, blurring the outside world into shades of brown and gold. Inside, passengers sat shoulder to shoulder, workers returning home, an old couple clutching groceries, a mother rocking her sleepy child, and a girl no older than 19 sitting quietly near the back. She wore a simple hoodie, faded jeans, and worn-out sneakers. Her hair was tied back in a low ponytail, and her eyes stayed fixed on the window as if she were watching the hills roll by. To anyone else, she looked like just another tired young woman heading somewhere unimportant, and no one noticed her posture, and no one noticed how she sat slightly angled, feet planted firmly, hands relaxed but ready, and no one noticed the faint scar disappearing beneath her sleeve. The bus slowed suddenly. The driver cursed under his breath as the vehicle jolted to a stop. Then the door burst open. 3 men stormed inside. Guns. Everything changed in a second. "Everyone stay where you are," one of them shouted, firing a round into the ceiling. Screams exploded through the bus as dust and plaster rained down. Another man slammed the door shut behind them and blocked it with his foot. "Phones out. Wallets out. No héroes." The third hijacker walked down the aisle slowly, guns swinging lazily in his hand, enjoying the fear. He kicked bags aside, yanked purses from trembling hands, laughed when someone cried. The girl in the hoodie didn't move. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. That caught his attention. He stopped in front of her and leaned closer, the barrel of his gun inches from her face. "Aren't you scared, brat?" he sneered. "Or are you stupid?" The bus went silent. Everyone watched. The girl slowly lifted her eyes, calm. "Cold. Focused. No," she said quietly. "I'm not scared." The hijacker laughed loudly. "You should be." He pressed the gun harder against her forehead. "Say goodbye to your courage." Still, she didn't move. Inside her chest, her heartbeat remained steady. Because this wasn't fear. This was patience. Her name was Alyssa Kane, and she was a United States Navy SEAL. Years earlier, Alyssa had learned that fear could be controlled. Broken down. Used. She had survived Hell Week when others quit. She had carried teammates twice her size through freezing water. She had been shot at, blown up, hunted, and tested beyond human limits. 3 sloppy criminals on a bus didn't even register as a threat. She assessed the situation in seconds. 3 hijackers. One near the door, one midway down the aisle, one directly in front of her, weapons visible. No hostages singled out yet. Windows reinforced. Limited space. Civilians everywhere. She waited. The leader barked orders at the driver. "Turn around. Take the highway toward the border." The driver nodded frantically as the bus lurched forward again. Panic returned. People cried softly. Someone prayed. The hijacker in front of Alyssa lowered his gun slightly, distracted by shouting from the front. That was the mistake. Alyssa moved. Her hand snapped up, gripping the barrel, twisting it away from her face. At the same time, she surged forward from her seat, driving her elbow into his throat with brutal precision. There was a sickening crack. He collapsed backward, gasping. Before anyone could react, Alyssa caught the falling weapon, rolled across the aisle, and used the seat for cover. Chaos erupted. "What the?" Gunfire exploded. Passengers screamed and dropped to the floor. Alyssa fired once, controlled, precise, shattering the gunman near the door's knee. He went down screaming. The third hijacker spun, wildly firing shots that shattered windows. Alyssa moved like a shadow. She advanced low, using seats as barriers, timing her movement between shots. When she reached him, she struck hard, disarming him, slamming his head into the metal pole and knocking him unconscious before he hit the floor. Silence followed, broken only by crying and the hiss of the bus brakes as the driver slammed them. Alyssa stood, breathing evenly, weapon trained until she was certain the threat was neutralized. Then she lowered the gun. Passengers stared at her. The same girl they'd ignored. The same brat they thought was weak. The driver turned slowly, eyes wide. Who are you?" She looked around, checking for injuries. Someone who didn't want anyone to die today. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Someone must have called for help when the shooting started. Alyssa finally allowed herself to sit down. Her hands were steady, her face unreadable. Minutes later, armed police swarmed the bus. They moved cautiously, guns raised, shouting commands. Hands up! Everyone hands up! Alyssa complied immediately. An officer approached her, eyes scanning the unconscious hijackers, then back to her. Miss, did you do this? She nodded once. They cuffed her, not roughly. Carefully to the station, questions came fast. How did you know how to disarm him? Where did you learn to shoot like that? Who trained you? Alyssa sighed and finally spoke the truth. I'm a Navy SEAL. The room went dead silent. One officer laughed nervously. You're joking. She reached in her pocket and slid her military ID across the table. The laughter stopped. Outside, news vans gathered. Inside, respect replaced disbelief. The story would spread fast. But Alyssa didn't care about fame. She cared that everyone on that bus was alive. Before she was released, an officer asked quietly, "Why didn't you tell anyone who you were?" Alyssa stood and pulled her hoodie back on. Real strength doesn't announce itself. The police station smelled of old paper, metal, and burnt coffee. Alyssa sat alone on the bench, hoodie pulled low, hands resting calmly on her knees. Outside the interrogation room glass, officers whispered, pointed, and kept glancing back at her as if she might disappear. A Navy SEAL. Not a story you heard every day. Not on a civilian bus. Not looking like a tired girl traveling home. That a senior officer finally entered the room, older, slower, but with eyes that had seen real violence. Miss Kane, he said respectfully, taking a seat. Washington has confirmed your identity. She nodded once. You saved 18 lives today. She didn't reply, that he leaned back. The media is outside. They want a statement. Pictures. Interviews. No. Alyssa said immediately that he studied her. You don't want credit? I want quiet, she replied. And I want to go home. The officer smiled faintly. Figures. By morning, the hijackers were in custody. One had lost the use of his leg. Another would wake up in a cell with no memory of how he got there. The third would spend the rest of his life remembering the moment he underestimated the wrong woman. Alyssa was escorted out a side door. But the story escaped anyway. Someone had filmed it, a shaky video, just seconds long, showing a young woman moving through chaos with terrifying calm. It spread like wildfire. Headlines exploded. Bus hijackers stopped by young woman. Teen girl disarms armed men. Then the truth surfaced. Navy SEAL saves bus full of civilians. The internet went mad. Commentators argued. Experts replayed footage frame by frame. Veterans recognized the movements instantly. That's training, one said. Elite training. Meanwhile, Alyssa returned to the small town she'd grown up in. The same place she'd sworn never to come back to. The house was quiet. Too quiet. She stood in the doorway for a long moment before stepping inside. Memories rushed her about a drunk father, a silent mother, a childhood filled with fear, hunger, and the constant feeling of being small. She'd joined the military at 18 not because she wanted glory, but because she wanted control. Strength. A way out. The SEALs had nearly broken her. Nearly. She remembered the instructors laughing when she arrived. She won't last a week. She lasted years. She outperformed men twice her size. She endured cold, pain, and exhaustion without complaint. She learned to kill, but more importantly, when not to. That was the difference. Now, her past and present collided. Neighbors stared when she walked down the street. Some recognized her. Some whispered. Others looked away, ashamed they'd once looked down on her family. Her phone buzzed constantly. Military command, journalists, strangers, she ignored them all. Until one call came through. Unknown number. She answered. Alyssa Kane, a familiar voice said. You've caused quite a stir. She straightened. Sir, you were off duty. Yes, sir. You violated no protocols. You saved civilians. You exercised restraint. A pause. We want you back. She closed her eyes. Active duty. High-risk operations. Covert. Exactly what she tried to escape, but then she remembered the bus, the crying child, the shaking driver. the gun at her forehead. She exhaled slowly. When? She asked. Immediately. That night, Alyssa packed quietly at dawn. She stood at the bus stop again, a different bus, a different road. But people still stared at a teenage boy whispered to his friend, pointing at her. That's her. Alyssa caught his eye, he froze. She smiled gently. Fear faded from his face. Respect replaced it. The bus pulled away. Somewhere far away, in a training facility hidden from maps, Alyssa stood once more among elite warriors this time. No one laughed. They nodded. They stepped aside. They made room. Because legends don't announce themselves, they reveal themselves when it matters most. And Alyssa Kane? She would disappear again into the shadows, until the next moment the world needed her.